TYT Sports, everybody. Ben Mankiewicz here. We got a big crew. Steve O is here. Steve, what's going on, my brother?
Hey, Ben.
JR, Jesus. And we're going to talk about something, sports fans, we love to talk about it. Steve and I talk about it. Jenk and I talk about it. You and Jenk talk about it. Clutch performances. And it's hard to measure, and it's something you go with based on what you see. Tom Brady's clutch. Peyton Manning isn't. That's what we believe, right? Because that's what we see.
Right.
And we see it, we talk about it all the time in the NBA too. Basketball, you think you know a clutch performer when you see one. So JR, big basketball fan, good basketball player, play with JR a lot. Steve and I do, he's a heck of a player. So JR, let me ask you a question. Who are among the top clutch players in the NBA?
Currently, well, if we're going to go by we hear, of course, first thing you get is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony.
Good
is
enough.
What you think.
All right. Jesus, we got those graphics ready? All right, here we go. Here are the top clutch players in the NBA. This is based on shots made with their team trailing or tied late in a game. The last 5 minutes of a ball game when you're down. Last 5 minutes right through the last 24 seconds when your team is down by 2 points or fewer or it's tied. Top five performers based on at least 30 shots. This is since 1996 through the present day. Here we go. First list, top performers. Carmelo Anthony hits nearly 50% of his shots. Then Chris Paul, this surprised me, at 45. And then a three-way tie between Sean Marion, Brendan Roy, and Hedo Turkoglu. Jenk would be happy to see that. Now we're going to bounce around. We're not going to give you all the list, but here's some other guys on that list. Let's get to the next page. You see Rashard Lewis on the list. Old Glenn Robinson on the list. Jalen Rose is on that list. Tim Duncan.
That surprises me more than anything else. Jalen Rose on that list.
Right. Everybody doesn't think of Jalen Rose as a money player, but these are the shots they hit. They hit big-time shots. Ben Gordon is on that list. By the way, look at the percentages. Nobody's hitting half their shots in these situations. 16th best clutch player since 1996, Chris Webber. There's LeBron at 17, hitting a third of his shots, as many as Raymond Felton hits, who's turned into a pretty good player. There's Ray Allen. There's the much-maligned Gilbert Arenas at number 20. Still moving down the list, Vince Carter at 32, who you don't see yet is Kobe, Steve Francis, Damon Stoudemire, Nick Van Exel, and JR at number 25, Kobe Bryant at 31.3%. So what does that mean about Kobe? First of all, to be fair to Kobe, he's taken a lot more shots than all of those guys. A ton more shots than all of those guys. Doesn't change the percentage, but Kobe has cranked up many more shots than all those guys. In fact, some of those guys have taken as few as 30 shots in big-time situations. Kobe, I think, has cranked up 115 shots in those situations. Nonetheless, he hasn't made many of them, but the perception is that Kobe is a money, big-time player. But the evidence suggests that maybe he isn't, and you don't think he is.
No. Look, I have been a Lakers fan my entire life. In fact, I moved to LA because I love the Lakers so much. And I love the Lakers obviously through the Magic era, but I love them during the Nick Van Exel, Sedell Threatt, Cedric Ceballos, those years as well. Loved them. And I still love the Lakers now, except I never loved Kobe. And the main reason is that he drove me crazy with his play.
In late game situations.
Yes.
Isolating, giving him the ball, everybody clears out of the way, and he just goes.
Yes.
Right.
And actually, a friend of mine who's not here, he and I are both big Lakers fans, and we used to talk about the Lakers every single game after their games during law school. And he and I always thought that Kobe was one of the most unclutch players in the sense that his performance in the last few minutes of the game are horrendous. And I just never understood why everyone thought he was so clutch. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think he's a good player. He's amazing.
Oh,
he's
nobody,
top 1, 2, maybe 3 player in the league, right?
Sure.
But I always thought that in the clutch, he tries to do too much, takes terrible shots, makes bad decisions, and almost always winds up failing.
Well, what's interesting, of course, he doesn't always wind up failing. He's made some huge shots. He's made some huge shots in the playoffs, but he's also missed some huge shots in the playoffs. And our mind tends to forget that because of the drama and excitement created when he hits it, and the announcer's voice, and the fans, and the cheering, or the devastation of the other team when he makes those shots. And I think that has a lot to do with sort of how people react and the tricks that our eyes plays. But it's more than just those shots that Kobe, it's more than just those statistics, because the Lakers as a team, over the course of Kobe's career, They have the most potent offense over the last 15 years in the NBA, JR. These guys score per 100 possessions 109 points per 100 possessions. It's the best in the NBA over the last 15 years. Kobe Bryant's the best player on the team. He is largely responsible for that. I don't think we can dispute that.
Absolutely true.
In the last 24 seconds of close games, they regress horribly, and they average just 82 points per 100 possessions in close games. And by the way, the whole league doesn't move with them. In fact, they're 11th in the league, so they take a significant step back in the last 24 seconds of close games, and we know who they look to in those close games. They look to Kobe. By the way, the New Orleans Hornets average 107 points per game, nearly what the Lakers average over a full game in those last 24 seconds of close games, per 100 possessions in close games. That is almost entirely attributable to Chris Paul.
Right,
down
because
the
Chris
stretch and
Paul creates great shots either for himself or for his teammates. He penetrates into the lane, and he gives David West a wide open 18-footer, which he nails, right?
So what's interesting is that what we've learned over the last 25 years in social sciences, I think, what we have learned in large part is that our eyes deceive us. We have learned that eyewitness testimony in court cases is the most unreliable testimony that there is. Justice Brennan in 1967 in U.S. versus Wade said eyewitness testimony is the testimony that juries most accept. That's what juries are most eager to hear, but it is notoriously unreliable. The Innocence Project, which is freed, keeps taking these guys off death row because it turns out they didn't do it. Bad eyewitness identification is the single greatest cause of wrongful convictions. 75% of convictions overturned through DNA testing, eyewitness testimony played a role. What this tells us is, and what's fascinating to me about these numbers regarding the NBA is, and it's true about all sports, don't trust your eyes. Just don't trust them. Scientists know it. We want to believe what we see. It doesn't mean what we see is wrong, but we are tricked by what we see. I've always found it fascinating that we rely on what we see, and we've learned more and more that what we see is unreliable. And as sports fans, we react emotionally. And we've learned more and more that reacting emotionally in life is not right, and our eyes deceive us. I want to leave you with one. Obviously, we're talking about the NBA and clutch performers, so I want to leave you with a story about rape. I think that's pretty obvious. It's a story about a woman named Jennifer Thompson, the story from Dahlia Lithwick, who appears on the Young Turks often. She was 22 years old when she was raped in 1984, and she scrupulously, Dahlia's story said, studied her attacker, memorized every detail of the guy's face. And so that if she survived, she would help be able to identify him. And she did. She identified a guy named Ronald Cotton in a photo lineup. And then she picked him out at a physical lineup a few days later. The guy gets convicted. He goes to prison. 10 years later, DNA comes out. He didn't do it. He's freed, and then DNA implicates another guy, a fellow named Bobby Poole. Then the curious part of the story, writes Dahlia Lithwick, is that despite her determination to memorize every detail of the case, when she first saw the guy who did do it in court, Bobby Poole, she had no recollection of ever seeing that guy before in her life, and it was the guy who raped her. And now she says, even though DNA exonerated Ronald Cotton, when she imagines the event, the traumatic event that happened to her, she still sees Ronald Cotton attacking her. And we know for a fact that he didn't and another guy did. And obviously that's a very serious issue, and we're just talking about the fun of sports. But it tricks us. And our perception is Kobe Bryant is the greatest clutch player. But he's not. And the fact of the matter is he takes too many bad shots, and the rest of the team stands around. And we think that all those dramatic plays, and he's made some huge plays in the playoffs, some incredibly dramatic plays. But he's also thrown up a bunch of air balls. And we don't remember those because our eyes deceive us, and Kobe Bryant is a gigantic loser. And we have proven it here today on DYT Sports.